So Greg, go ahead and hit that record button.
Yep, we're ready.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Joe Kramer. I'm the Executive Director of the Michigan Bean Commission, and I have the honor of representing all the dry bean growers here in the great state of Michigan. I invited two growers from very different but also similar production areas. I've got with us today Greg Ackerman, who farms with his family here in Michigan, and Roger Carignan, who's also involved in a family farm of his own in North Dakota. And I thought it would be interesting just to see what it's like in the life of these two gentlemen as they move their way through spring planting season. So appreciate you guys taking some time to sit with us this morning. Greg, maybe we'll start with you and just have you introduce yourself a little bit and tell us just a little bit about your farm.
Okay, as Joe said, I'm Greg Ackerman. I'm a fourth generation farm here in Vassar, Michigan. We obviously grow dry beans, sugar beets, corn, soybeans, and wheat. I have two children that are working on the farm now, and a couple cousins that we also work with. So we're eager to get started here planting our dry beans this year. So.
Yeah, I don't think you've started yet. Roger, you're a little further along. Tell us about yourself.
I'm Roger Carignan. I'm northeast North Dakota, up around the Walhalla area. I've been on a farm all my life. My dad farmed, grandpa farmed, took over from dad, and I farm with a brother now. We grow wheat, canola, sunflowers, and dry beans, mostly pintos and blacks up here is what we grow.
I should say that both of these guys happen to serve their industry as well. Roger is on the North Harvest Bean Growers Board of Directors and also serves on the U.S. Dry Bean Council. Same for Greg. He's currently chairman of the Michigan Bean Commission and also serves as a delegate to the U.S. Dry Bean Council. So the industry, I know, appreciates your service there too. So thanks for volunteering. I know you're not doing it for the pay, but Roger, you went through kind of a tough growing season. I know here in Michigan we had a tough time getting them in the ground, and then we turned a little bit dry. We'll let Greg talk about that, but your situation, I think, was a little bit worse. So how did your growing season sort of end, if you will, last fall?
Last fall was awful. It was a dry summer, and it started raining in September sometime, and it never stopped. On our farm, we left 30% of our acres in the field. We never combined a pinto, and we only did 80 acres of black beans. The rest stayed out there. We had wheat and canola that stayed out also. And that was a challenge this spring because actually we've had a fairly decent spring. We haven't had a lot of rain, but it's the old crop that was laying out there that wasn't harvested that ground just wouldn't dry out. And we're still actually waiting on some to dry out so we can get on it here. And actually around this area right now, I think everybody's hoping for a rain. There's a lot of seed that's been put in the dry dirt. So everybody's looking forward to a rain here. Even though there's still some wet ground, but hope, it'll dry up. We'll get on it. We'll seed here till, the 15th of June, maybe even the 20th is not a problem.
I should have asked you earlier, Roger, where are you actually located? Which part of North Dakota?
Northeast North Dakota, northeast part of the state.
You're way up there, if I recall, right? Close to the Canadian border?
I'm only about 15 miles from the Canadian border.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
So the 30% that you left in the field, just completely abandoned, that's going to get worked under. There's no value to that crop. It's just total expense at the end of the day.
Yep. It was a lot of it we burned this spring. There were field fires around here like you wouldn't believe. Everything went up in flames.
Literally lit them on fire.
Yep, we lit the fields on fire. That was our only hope that we could get it to dry out. So that's what we did. And everybody did around here. Here to the west of me, all the wheat, canola, it got burnt. As far as the dry beans that were out there, that wasn't an issue because there was enough black ground showing on that. I mean, those plants aren't, once the leaves are gone, there's really nothing there. A lot of that stuff we sowed right into it with our wheat crop this year. But it was the old wheat crop and the old canola ground that made an issue.
Yeah,
Everything was
unbelievable.
matted over. So bad.
I've actually never heard it doing that. That is unbelievable. Greg, your experience might be a little bit different than that. I don't know that you've ever burnt a crop at the end of the season, but how did your growing season look last year?
We've burned a crop in the past, but it wasn't intentional, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I got one question for Roger before I start here. All those acres of dry beans that you left in the field, do you plant that to a different crop? You don't go back to dry beans, I assume, correct?
No, we do not. You can't get crop insurance on it if you do. So we usually go to a wheat on those dry beans the following year for the rotation.
Yeah, because those beans will want to grow on you. So you'd have an issue with, 2 crop years. I'm sure you had full seeds in there, and they'll want to grow once you work that crop down. So I was just curious.
Interesting.
Yeah, and like I said, we went in with we no-tilled it. We didn't work it. We just went in and sowed just like that. And they're laid over enough from the air drill that they're not an issue in the fall. Yeah. I mean, they'll be shelled out, gone, whatever.
Well, I wish you luck. We had our challenges here last year. We got our corn and sugar beets and things planted, and then when it was time to plant dry beans, it rained and rained and rained, and we tried a few different times, but the ground never got fit. We're in a small pocket here, I would say, that caught a ½ inch of rain about every 3 to 4 days, and it just didn't get dry enough. So the first time in my life that I've been farming, and I've been at it my whole life as well, we didn't plant a crop, and so it was a little different. The guys that did plant put them in on some tough conditions. Tough, I mean wet. You work the ground wet, you're packing it down. Yeah. But in the end, they come out pretty well. Like those beans actually did better than what I thought they would be. They got dry for a spell there in the summer, and I thought when you plant in tough conditions and then it dries up on you, it's kind of a double whammy. But all in all, Michigan fared better than what I thought. So I think our varieties are better today. Some of the technology that our breeders have put into these beans overcome some of that. I think the beans are a little hardier. So all in all, we're looking forward to this year. We actually got the planter out last night, put 40 acres in to test everything out, and we got a couple of field cultivators running right now, and putting down some pre-emerge for the beans, and we put a nitrogen carrier down with some pre-emerge to take care of some of the weeds early on. We'll be planting here yet today, so.
That's great. Finally get the wheels turning. Greg, when as you get started here, how did you decide what you're going to plant in terms of beans? I mean, is it I know rotation comes into play a little bit. You studying markets. Are you changing varieties, or sorry, I should say classes annually, bouncing back and forth, or do you kind of stick with the same thing from year to year?
No, we're changing all the time. We typically grow blacks, navies, and small reds lately. But early on, when we were making our decision, I was looking at the carryout numbers. And at that time, black beans would have been a higher carryout. So we elected not to go to black beans. And then when the COVID hit, it was interesting because blacks were at one point kind of the only thing that were left in the market. And now those have disappeared. So that's one thing with COVID is it's really increased the demand on our dry edible beans. And so we have a little different story than like the corn growers and the wheat growers and so forth, because it's been helpful having dry beans in the rotation.
And Roger, I assume the same is true in your neck of the woods with the forecast for a lower pinto carryover or a navy carryover, and now black bean carryover. I suppose you're not bouncing back and forth a whole lot either, or did you make some adjustment?
We haven't made any adjustments. Rotation pretty much dictates a lot of what we can only grow so many acres of them with our rotation. And this year, especially, if you didn't book seed early, you can't get it. Especially pinto seed. I believe black seed was short also. So if you didn't book, we booked way back in December our seed, and at the end of December they were telling us all the seed was booked for. It's out. So wow. I think there's very little acre change here. The only acre change I see is in the farther south of me. There's really, really wet conditions. Some of those guys are not going to get in, so some of that seed has been shifted up north farther. So as far as acres, just in a different area.
They'll take prevented plant down that way?
It sounds like there's going to be a fair amount in certain areas, probably 100 miles south of me or so.
Wow. All right. So let's just look forward a little bit and see if there's any differences between what you guys are doing being, what are you, 1,500 miles apart, 1,700 miles apart probably. You got, let's say you have your crop in the ground. It's the last week of June, first week of July. What are you looking for if you're a North Dakota dry bean grower 15 miles south of the Canadian border?
Well, hopefully by that time, weed spray is done. Once we get into July, hopefully we're done with that. Usually around that 10th of July, 15th of July is time to do white mold. And we depends on conditions. I mean, if it's wet, we will do it. But if we're drier conditions, we won't do it at all. White mold, it's an issue here, but it has to be wet for it to really do damage for us.
Yeah. And Greg, what about you? Is it similar?
Yeah, real similar to what Roger said. Like, so we'll put a pre-emerge down as we plant here. That'll give us a window to come back in and do a post application of some herbicides, and we'll put an insecticide on to protect the plants. And then around, I think around the first part of August is when normally the flowers will come out, and you want to protect those flowers. If you have damp soil, those mold spores will come out of the soil and infect that plant. Right. You want to protect those flowers, and it's very important. And we're kind of like Roger. If we need to do it, we do it. If it happens to be dry and it makes no sense, then you're just kind of wasting your money. So it's all about scouting. There's certain things you do every year, and with dry beans, we pretty much spray for the weeds every year. But like on wheat, we're going to put a head scab spray on here. We started yesterday, and we'll continue on as the flowers come out on the heads on the wheat. So just to protect it from getting the head scab.
Just out of curiosity, what's a white mold treatment cost either one of you guys? I assume it's roughly the same for both of you, but what's it cost you per acre to put down that first application?
It's 20 plus if you don't go. It's expensive.
Yeah. Greg, I thought Roger's number would be closer to 30, to be honest.
No, it's for the product, it's anywhere from about 16 to a little over 20, and then your application. So you're in that mid 20 range usually.
All right.
On a decent year, it's about a bag of beans, but if you hit the beans at the right time, it could be 10 bag increase. I mean, we've had
Yeah.
years where white mold isn't an issue, and then we've had years where it wipes out the crop. And those years, one thing about fungicide spray is it'll help, but it doesn't get rid of 100% of your mold issue. It's not 100% cure.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
you do it at the right time, and hopefully you get as good a coverage as you can get. And you know, this situation we're in, it's all about Mother Nature. You can do everything right. You know, it doesn't matter how much you spend on the crop and preparing and taking care of it and scouting. If Mother Nature treats you right, you're going to do well. If Mother Nature decides to turn on you, you're in trouble.
Super risky stuff, isn't it? I mean, you're just banking on her to smile on you a little bit. Okay, so we get through sort of the treatment aspect, and assume for a moment you've got heat at the right time and you've got moisture at the right time. It's now time to get ready for harvest. I don't know if you guys grow soybeans or not, but as you both know, our industry battles a little bit with allergens, and we're really conscious of that. So talk to me a little bit about harvest prep work. What happens as you get ready to harvest that crop? What's that look like? Maybe we'll start with Roger.
Well, we do grow soybeans here, but the ideal year, all our edibles should be off before the soybeans are ready to be combined, but that doesn't happen. You know, so we're into soybeans, and then we go back to dry beans, and we clean out as much as you can. You know how hard it is to clean a machine out.
Terrible.
Soybeans hang up in there anywhere. I mean, it doesn't take much, but we try to do our best. It's tough though, but like I said, hopefully, ideally, the edibles are done before you're into the soybeans.
And what about if you're a pinot and a black bean grower out there, you have the same problem, except it's just a contrasting class, right? It's not an allergen.
Yeah, the plants here they're not even concerned about that. I mean, they run everything over the electric dye anyway. It's not a concern. You know, we don't even clean out. Empty out and go, basically, from one variety to the other.
Same for you, Greg?
Similar. If we go from navies to blacks or vice versa, we'll vacuum everything out, blow the combine thoroughly, take the panels off of it. We do a thorough clean out, and then we'll still go back out and we'll start in the next crop. And that first few bushel, we'll just auger out onto the ground just to get them off. And like Roger said, it's not a big deal, but soybeans, that's one thing we don't do. We don't switch from soybeans back to dry beans. We try, and that's kind of a no-no. We run 2 combines. If we switch over with one, that'll stay in the soybeans. You can't get all the soybeans or all the previous crop out. There's places you can't reach. You know, you can probably get 90% out or 95%, but you can't get 100. So in soybeans, like Joe said, as an allergen, you want to try and do your best to get them out, because it makes it easier on the processor.
You guys your family farms have included dry beans for your whole lives, I assume. I just know from my experience, the demand for documentation and paperwork looks different today than it did 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Do you have somebody assigned to keeping up with all that in your operation, or does that fall on you? Are you using electronics? Is there an app for tracking all that documentation that processors expect? Greg, what's that look like in your operation?
Well, we do kind of a double entry. When we're doing the application, it gets inputted into the computer, and then it flows into a software that we run. But for our own sake, we do it longhand as well. So there's books in all our sprayers. everything gets documented. It doesn't matter really what you're doing. If you're going across a field, everything kind of gets documented just to back it up. And it's sometimes it can be easier for us just to go in and open up a book and see what you did, you know, prior year, or what the rate is if you happen to, you know, need some information that's at your fingertips. So
yeah. You guys both get involved in contracting beans, I assume, for doing some forward contracting, and I think that looks different than it did years ago. But as you look forward, or maybe I shouldn't say it that way, as you chose what classes of beans you're going to plant this year, are you just planting them and hoping that there's a market for them when harvest time comes, and you can get a decent value out of them? Or how are you guys managing market risk or market exposure in today's environment? Roger, I don't know if pinto beans are different than Greg's navies or blacks, but maybe we'll start with you with pintos.
We normally try to contract some, I'm going to say 25% of our acres, maybe at the most. And depending on what kind of contracts they come up with, you know. This year we probably did maybe 20% of our acres, I'm going to say. So, but around here, there's some heavy contracts that people like to have a contract to grow.
Yeah. I think it's
we kind of keep a lot of them open and hope for the best in the fall.
Yeah, you're at least on my end, you're breaking just a little bit, Roger. But Greg, I think you're about the same, aren't you? I mean, you do a little bit of contracting, and how do you get started there?
I think that, you know, everybody's a little different, but it's whatever you feel comfortable with. If you think the upside potential is greater than the downside risk, then you hold off a little bit. And if you think, everybody, I think, books some, right? And there's growers out here, I have neighbors that if they can't pre-contract some, they're probably not going to grow them. We grow beans year in and year out. We just grow them no matter what. So we always have a few contracted, but beans are a little bit riskier crop to plant, so you never want to get too far on the edge of that contracting. I learned the hard way. Back in 1986, we had a flood, and we had a really nice looking crop of beans. And I remember going to Star of the West Elevator back then and contracting, and 3 days later we got like 13 inches of rain.
Ouch.
So we ended up delivering those beans the following year. I think they let us out on those, and we had to still deliver, but it was a year later. So learn the hard way.
Those are important lessons if you can survive through them, aren't they? Well, listen, I appreciate your time today. We've kind of covered the growing season and the life of a farmer, and I think what I'm hearing is that whether you're in Michigan or Mindac, the risk is similar. You're dependent on Mother Nature to smile on you. But I wish you guys well this growing season. Be safe. I appreciate your time this morning, just hanging out with us for a little bit. I know you're both busy, and I'll let you guys get back to work. So appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
You bet. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks for having us, Joe. And just to throw a plug in there, you know, this isn't our typical day sitting in the office doing I have a son. If you want to see some videos of us out in the field, he's got a YouTube channel called Farmable. It's an easy tool for people that don't understand the day in life of a farmer. And there's so many other people out there doing it, and they explain as they're doing things why they're doing it. It's kind of a learning tool. It's great for kids. If anybody has time, I encourage you to visit a few of them YouTube sites and check them out. So
great reminder. Thanks, Greg. That is an asset, and I know Mitchell does a great job with those things. You know that I enjoy watching them, and you learn so much about what things look like on the farm. So I appreciate you reminding me to bring that up. So All right, take care. Have a good day, you guys. Be safe.
Good luck, Roger.
You too.
Yep, thank you.